Everybody, it's Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. You just probably finished up season 4, those top 100 tips to be great at growth. And what we saw in season 4 is that must have added a lot of value because downloads doubled. So if you're dropping into this one, you're going to want to go back to check out season 4. So season 5, we're going back to long form interviews. Really excited about it. The theme across this season is going to be digging into a little bit around mindset, the mindset of growth, both personally and with your book of business. And who better to kick off the season on mindset than the person who, product placement, who wrote the book on mindset soundtracks, which is Jon Acuff. Jon, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, it's great to see you again, Mo. I'm looking forward to it. I think last time we saw each other was BC, before COVID. That's how I divide time now in my life. There's only 2 segments. There's before COVID and after COVID. And you were before COVID, if I'm not mistaken, which is crazy to me.
And are you like me that DC during COVID is just this big mess of events? That
it's a jumble. There's no order. It's a slurry of calendar. The calendar is just a slurry. There's no borders, no timelines, just a big slurry. That's the word I think of. Definitely.
It's the vegetable soup of events. Like there's a celery.
There's blender. It got blendered. That's how I think about it. It's like, well.
Well, you can see why I wanted to have Jon on, because he's funny. He's 12% funnier, maybe 14% funnier than our average guest. So, Jon, the stakes are high.
I don't know, dude. I bet 50. Are you having some funny people? I haven't seen your roster, dude, but come on. 12%? Do you have other people that do this like this? Come on. 12%.
We have a lot of scientists.
Yeah, I was about to say, they're probably better at math than me. Like, fine, they're better at accounting, but dude, I'm dunking. I'm not even going to accept dishonesty right out of the gate. Let's keep this an honest conversation.
You're 12%.
Dude, 12%. Yeah, nice.
All right, we'll give you 112%.
Let's go.
But you got to deliver. You got to deliver on the show.
Fine.
Okay.
I already said slurry. When's the last time your listeners heard the word slurry applied to their calendar in a comedic way? The answer is never, Mo.
Okay.
The answer is never.
You're laying down the facts here.
Yeah, that's true.
You got me. I'm in a corner. I'm in a comedic corner. What am I going to do? I can't fight out of this.
Hey, you painted yourself in there. I didn't. I'm just pointing it out. I'm like, it's drying, dude. You're going to just have to sit there for a while, but that's where you are.
Becky, I'm in the corner. I'm in the comedic corner of my metaphorical painting.
I'm going to have to go back and see who's hilarious on your roster now, because I know it's going to be like really smart, really tall, not funny, has glasses, and looks smart. We'll see. We'll see.
The shortest interview ever. A guest gets angry and hangs up.
Yeah. That's funny. That you could use a clickbaity title though. You could be like, why did this New York Times bestseller storm off our podcast? And then people would listen and be like, that really wasn't a big deal. He seemed more humorously angry than real angry, Mo, but you got my click. Yeah. So.
And they never got the content because he hung up. So that was a little weird. The whole thing was 5 minutes.
Yeah, it just fell apart. It fell apart. And I've had podcasts that went shorter than I thought they'd be. And they're always abrupt. And they always end where people are like, okay, good talking to you. And you're like, all right, that was 17 minutes. That's the end. So that's not going to be how this goes. Let's jump into
everybody. No, we are going to add value and we are going to be funny. You can tell. All right, Jon. So you've seen the question set. I'm actually super interested. The general question to all our guests is, hey, what new ideas are you working on? But I think here we want to focus on product placement the second time, the word soundtracks, the book. Hey, an audience, in all seriousness, I got a lot out of this book. I felt like I was partly going to the therapist, Jon, partly going to a comedy club, and in the end, I was better for it. So tell us about soundtracks. Why did you write it? What's resonate with the audience? And you'll remember our audience, people that they're building a book of business, they're building relationships and things like that. So what can they get out of it? What are the big ideas they should know?
Well, here's why I wrote it. I think if you're going to do a business, if you're going to launch something, design something, whatever, there's a Venn diagram to a best-selling idea, in my opinion. The first thing is a personal connection. Do I have a passion about this thing? People can tell when you don't, and that's when they feel they're getting sold. So do I have a personal connection? I did. I'm an overthinker. I've overthought every situation in my life. I changed how I was thinking about 12 years ago, and it changed my life. So I had a personal connection to this topic. Second thing is there a need? Do people need this? So when I'm talking to neighbors, when I'm online, when I'm at conferences, What are the FAQs clients are asking me? Is there a real need in the community? So I have a PhD friend named Mike Peasley. He's a professor here in Nashville. We asked 10,000 people if they struggle with overthinking, and 99.5% of people said yes. So anytime you as a business owner have something that 99.5% of people raise their hand for, you go, wow, there's a need. Third thing is you check the marketplace. Is there a spot where I can fit in this marketplace? Or is it already so crowded there's no room? So I checked my marketplace and realized a lot of resources around mindset would say things like, stop it, stop it, stop it. Just turn off your thoughts. And number one, that's impossible. Like I love meditation, quiet time, whatever. That's 10 minutes of your day, 30 minutes of your day. What about the other 23 and a half hours? And two, you're designed to think. You have this really amazing gift to think and change. We're the only species that can change. Like if you think about it, every blue jay has built the same exact nest as every other blue jay. There's never been a blue jay that said, now I'm going to do a townhouse, like a tall and skinny. We're going to knock down an old house. Like I'm a postmodern kind of bird. Like they always do the same thing because they can't change. We can change. Wouldn't it make more sense to just have our thoughts work for us, not against us? And so once I had those three things, I was willing to say, yes, I want to spend years to this conversation. I'm going to lean into this. It's how I wrote my book before this finish. I was a chronic starter. I wasn't good at finishing. I had 1 million half-finished business ideas, half-finished notebooks, half-finished books I wanted to write. So I had the first box. Second box, people came up to me and said, hey, I liked your book Start. It was about starting goals. And then they said, but no offense, I've never had a problem starting. I have 100 URLs registered at GoDaddy. I can start 1,000 things tomorrow. How do I actually finish them? And then I checked the marketplace, which is Amazon for an author. And if you look up the word finish in Amazon, the only thing that comes up when I checked it was dishwasher detergent. Because we as a culture over celebrate the beginning. We have launch parties and kickoff parties. We ignore the middle. We ignore the finish. So I had my Venn diagram. So as a creator, I'm always going, and the way I break it down for some people is I'll go, let's say you have a tremendous passion. You see a need, but it's already overserved in the marketplace. You have a cake pop. If a listener said to me, Jon, I've got this crazy new idea I'm going to do called cake pops, I'd be like, oh, dude, I have such terrible news. We already have those. By the time it's in Starbucks, we have that item. So that's what happens if you only have those two. Say you have a tremendous passion. It's not being served in the marketplace, but nobody needs it. That's a hobby. And it's great to have hobbies. Like I love that you're into albino ferrets, but nobody needs that. Now, say you have a tremendous need you identify in a hole in the marketplace, but you don't care about it. You just built yourself another day job. Like you might be successful at it, might make money, but you just built yourself another day job. So for me, that's always how I look at whether it's a speech, a business idea, a book are those three elements present? And if they are, okay, let me investigate further. Let me, invest some money. That's how the book came about.
Well, and you were right because it's been tremendously successful. It's sold really, really well. You hit you hit a bunch of the bestseller lists, right?
Well, yeah. And the thing is, I mean, it's done very well, but I was also fortunate. I can't take credit that this thing called a pandemic happened right as it was coming out and everybody started overthinking everything. Like if you weren't an overthinker before, you are now because every part of your life has extra layers of thought. No one listening to this right now for the first 95% of their life had to figure out the right way to walk down a grocery store aisle. You used to be so good at the grocery store. And then the pandemic was like, no, you got to overthink. Is this an up aisle? Is this a down aisle? Like every part of your life, like are our friends, like where are they on the fear scale? Like how do we do we shake hands? Do we elbow? Do we like wave from afar? Like, so I really also benefited from this thing that people started to go, okay, my mindset matters. How do I deal with that? How do I build on that? And you asked what the book teaches. Ultimately, it teaches you how to turn overthinking from a super problem into a superpower. And it does it with 3 distinct actions. That was the other thing is that so many books about mindset are holistic and don't give me action. What am I doing with that on a Tuesday? Like, I don't like when people go, you got to have an abundance mindset. I agree. So how? Like, tell me, and don't just go feel nicer about yourself. Like practice gratitude. Like, what does that mean on a Tuesday? What does that mean on a Thursday when I'm in an argument with my wife? What does that mean? Like, I want practical. So the book practically teaches you 3 things: how to retire your broken soundtracks. And a soundtrack is just my phrase for repetitive thought. Number 2, how to replace those broken soundtracks with new soundtracks. Your brain is waiting to be told what to think. And the third is how do you repeat those so often they become as automatic as the old ones? So retire, replace, repeat. That's the core of the book. And there's a lot of exercise and activities that help you along that path, but ultimately that's what the book is there to teach you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to skip over one thing, audience. I want you to hear this because it was one of the most stressful times in my life. I'm in the supermarket and I'm going down the aisle in the right way in the middle of the pandemic. And I get to the end of the aisle and I realize I need something about 10 feet back.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What do you
Totally.
do?
Yeah.
That's stressful.
Yeah. That is.
Do you run?
Do you walk backwards
sprint?
and try to like confuse people visually? Do you know what I mean? Like trick them visually. You're like, this is still counts. Like the tip of my shopping cart's the right direction. I mean, you got a lot of options there. Like you do.
All right. Well, I'm skipping over that, but that's true. I still remember it. Like the first time. Do you circle all the way around? Okay. So I want to get into the second question. I've actually, audience, so because this is the first episode in season 5, I've got 5 specific questions that I'm going to ask Jon. The first one sort of, what's the big idea? What's he been working on? Obviously, that's the book soundtrack. Now we want to spend the bulk of our time on this one, which is how can that idea, how can we solve for overthinking, turn it from sort of our enemy to a superpower? How can we do that specifically for us? So Jon knows, all of you in the audience, you've got one foot into building a book of business, deepening relationships, but you've also got this one foot in delivering some kind of deep technical expertise that you've learned over years, probably decades. I was thinking of the audience when I read the book, Jon, and again, I just love the book. Some of the overthinking that I see a lot, which you can help our audience solve right now, are things like overthinking how I reach out to a client. I emailed them, they didn't email back. I want to keep going. Oh gosh, what do I do? Overthinking like, I'm not sure what they want. Pause, hesitate, frozen. What do I do? Overthinking like, I want to reach out to that person that I went to law school with. I got my MBA with them, but it's been 15 years and now I notice they're a potential buyer of my services, but I'm hesitant. I feel like a heel for reaching out. So like all those are examples of overthinking. What would be best for you? Do you think we should grab one of those and tackle it? Should you start at a higher level? You guide me to help our audience the most.
Yeah. So here's the exercise I always think about, because people will go, well, how do I know if I have a broken soundtrack? That's great. Like, how do we, like, let's start there. How do I even know? And I'll give you a 30-second exercise that every listener can do later today. All you do, if you want to identify a broken soundtrack, is write down a goal. And it can be any goal. It can be, I want to expand my book of business by 10%. It can be, there's this amazing client I'm desperate to work with. It can be, I want to get better at leading people. I'm now at this position where I have to move from like warrior to king or warrior to queen and manage people. And I'm good at the skill, but I'm not good at leadership. And I need to invest in that. It can be anything. It can be, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to start a podcast. I want to read more. I want to network more, whatever. Write down a goal and then listen to your first thoughts. Listen to the thoughts that come next. Listen to your reaction, because every reaction is an education. Is your reaction, Mo, you should do that. It's time to expand the business. You're so ready for that. Like, good for you. Like, you've got the network, you've got the skills. It's finally time. We're so excited. Or is it the reverse? Is it, who are you to think you can do that? You can't do that. You've tried 10 times before. The client isn't going to answer the 11th call. Like, you failed at your other diets. Why wouldn't you fail at this one? And what's interesting about fear, Mo, is it argues both sides of the coin. When you're in your 20s and 30s trying to build a book of business, it says you're too young. You don't have enough experience. You don't have enough wisdom. You hit your 40s and 50s. It says it's too late. You don't have enough time. Like, you've missed your window. And you want to say to fear, when was I the perfect age to do this thing? As if it'll say, there were 10 minutes when you were 34. It was a Tuesday in October. It would have been fantastic. So first you identify whether you have a broken soundtrack. And then the next step is you ask it 3 really simple questions. And you don't ask every thought these questions because you have 60,000 thoughts a day. Nobody has time for that. You ask the loud ones, the ones that are really holding you back. And they're Trojan horse questions. They're not fancy. No one's going to be impressed by these questions, but they're Trojan horse because if you ask them, they'll actually teach you something. Number 1 is it true? Is the thing I'm telling myself about myself right now true? One of the greatest mistakes you can make is assuming all your thoughts are true. And we believe them because our thoughts are delivered in the voice we've heard the most in our life, our own. And we never go back and tell them they were wrong. So like, we've all had a situation where we go, oh, that client's so frustrated. They're so mad. They're upset at me. And then you finally interact with them and they weren't those things at all. Not like, it turns out they have their own busy life. They weren't actively thinking like, I'm so furious. We never go back to that thought that told us they were mad and go, hey, you got me. You got me this time. But next time, I'm not going to trust you with the next client. We just carry that broken behavior on. Second question is it helpful? When I think this again and again and again, does it move me forward or does it pull me back? And the reason you need to ask more than one question is some things in life are true, but they're not helpful. I'll give you an example. I interviewed a manager who said, you know, Jon, 12 years ago, I got fired. And I noticed recently, every time there's a meeting that I'm not invited to at my office, I start to go, why am I not in that meeting? Who's in that meeting? Are important people in that meeting? What's the agenda of that meeting? Is it true he could be fired? It is. Is it helpful for him to donate time to that thought every time he sees the door close on a meeting he's not in? Of course not. And the third question is it kind? Is it kind of, if I said this to a friend, would they still want to be my friend? If I said this to a client, would they still want to be my client? So if you can't answer yes to, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? It's probably a broken soundtrack you need to retire. So, you know, if you heard, unless I get this perfect, the client will be furious. Is that true? Like the client has said, you know, there's a level of perfection. And if you're human for a second, if you need a follow-up question, like if I ask a follow-up question, the client will think I'm dumb and won't want to work with me. Is that true? Like they've done, like, is it helpful for you to tell yourself that? It's not, because you don't get the answer you need. And is it kind to yourself? You don't get to answer any questions. And often it's the reverse. The client will go, I'm so glad you followed up. I'm so glad I get to have a little clarity of this. I'm so glad you did this. So for me, that's the process. And then I would just give you one specific that I think will help your listeners, that helped me as I build my book of business. I had a lot of broken soundtracks specifically around sales. I was in corporate marketing.
Yeah, you cover this in the book quite a bit. Yeah, keep going.
So I was in corporate marketing for 15 years, a copywriter, kind of in the advertising department. I wasn't in sales. Sales was a different animal in a different building. And then when I started my own book of business, oh no, I'm in sales. I have to handle sales. And I had all these broken soundtracks that would say, if you keep pushing what you do, if you keep talking about what you do, if you keep reaching out to people, they're going to be bothered. They're going to be upset. And I had to say, is that true? Am I ever mad when somebody sells me something I need or want? And I realized I'm not. I never am frustrated at an REI sporting goods store.
Yeah, and you use REI in the book. And that's the example I have. Like when you walk into REI, you want help. You're excited when they say there's 3 levels of waterproof jackets, which one's right for you. Like it's
exactly
an experience.
And so you have to flip that. So the example I use in the book, the second one is, I love putting together massive Lego sets. Like if somebody's watching Lego vehicles, cars specifically, they can see the video. Like there's the VW bus, there's the Porsche 911, there's the VW Beetlebug. There's, you know, there's so many different sets. And one Christmas, Lego sent us 6 catalogs, but I didn't care because I love Lego. So my new soundtrack, because again, retire, replace, I replaced the broken ones with, I'm somebody's Lego. If I do my job well, people are excited when I reach out. They're excited to find out I have a podcast. Like they're excited to book me for a second event. They're excited to find out I have, you know, 9 books. And so that's what I had to start believing and telling myself and leaning into. And then the other thing is, as far as follow-up goes, like a specific one that I listen to with that is, I own the follow-up. Like it's on me. It's on me. Like if I will never give somebody my business card, because that makes it their job. If I'm trying to win the business, I own the follow-up. So my job is to get their contact in my phone and then follow up. And my job is to go, like the other day, somebody mentioned they loved Allen Iverson growing up as a kid. So I sent them an Allen Iverson rookie card, because I was like, that'll be fun. He's never from a client or from a vendor gotten an Allen Iverson rookie card. And so like, that was fun, but it's my job to take that note, to ask that question, to care about that client. So like, the more I spend in my own business, like owning those things and having a soundtrack around that, gives me the confidence to go, no, that's my job. It turns out it might not be natural to me because I'm not a detailed person, but the ROI of it far outweighs the work of it. So that changes my business forever if I'll own those things like that.
Yeah, I love it. So what I want to do next is I want to dive into an exact soundtrack that I hear all the time from our audience. So I know this is in a majority of people's minds. And I'm going to paint a little bit of a picture, and then we'll have you use the 3 questions and decode it. Does that sound good? Okay.
Sure.
So here's the thing I hear a lot. I had a great conversation with person X at a conference, on a Zoom call, in a coffee meeting, whatever. And then I followed up. I sent one email. This is usually the way the story goes. I sent an email the day after. Oh, that's really fast. Like judging success on the speed of the first email.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do next because I don't want to be a nag. That's what I hear all the time. Yeah. Let's use your 3 questions and let's decode it.
Well, the first thing I'd say is it true? So is it true that following up is you nagging? It's only true if you're not solving a problem. It's true if you're selling a thing, that's nagging. But if I know they have a problem and I have the solution, and I do the work of going, how do I figure out how to solve a problem that they have? I'm never mad when somebody solves a problem. I'm never frustrated when my graphic designer puts together amazing PowerPoint slides, because I get compliments on those slides at speaking events. I'm not the one that put them together. I have an expert that does that. So I'm never mad when she follows up and goes, hey, do you have any speeches that I go, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm so glad. So it's only true if you're not solving a problem. If you're solving a problem that you know they have because you listened in the meeting and you cared about them, then it's not true that it's a nag.
And John, before we go to the next one, I want to dive in on this because I want to split this out a little bit.
Sure.
I think what people are fearful of is when we all get truly sold to, and I mean sold to using the bad version of the definition of sell. And it's when somebody sends one note and then they do this super dumb thing where they follow up. They literally just reply to the note that they sent, keeping in the same thread. No, just popping this to the top of your email address.
No, it's insulting. It's insulting.
It is.
That's insulting because you're saying to me, hey, I want to remind you, you failed to respond to me. Who wants that? I would never do that. Like, Mo, you and I, the reason we really enjoy each other's company is that we look at things practically like that. So like when somebody says, hey, there's an influencer, there's a leader I'm trying to connect with. How do I connect with them? I always go, oh, don't send them a long email, because that's what everybody sends, this long email. No.
This is what we teach. Yeah.
One question. I always say, ask them one question. What's a book you'd recommend I read? And then here's the wild part. You read the book and then you write them back a second email and go, hey, here's 3 things I got out of that book. Is there another book you think I should read? Like that person, like when somebody does that for me and I go, oh, you should read The War of Art. And then they send me like that's a conversation. That's a relationship. I tell people, ask strangers for friendship, ask friends for favors. The problem is when...
Say that again.
Ask strangers for friendship, ask friends for favors. The problem is when you skip that stage and you ask a stranger for a favor. And the favor can be buy my product, do my service. But so for me, if somebody takes the time, that's the other thing, Mo, is that clients are going, wow, they put their most valuable non-renewable resource into this. They put time into it. And wow, I can see that. And that's different versus it's not a form letter. It's not like I would never reply. That again, like you and I could do a 10-hour conversation about this because we agree on so many things. And that's what's fun about getting to be your friend.
Well, I feel the same way. And back to the idea around your question, is it true? Well, the idea of being a nag is true if you're a freaking nag. That's what we're talking about. And I loved your language of solving a problem. So if somebody doesn't reply to the first email, they were probably just busy.
Here's a soundtrack. No, you just said a soundtrack that I use. Assume they're busy too. When we don't reply to emails, we don't go, I'm such a terrible person. We go, I'm busy. I got the text message during my kid's swim meet. I wanted to respond. It got lost, whatever. Like, assume they're busy too. We assume clients are ignoring emails, but we don't assume that about ourselves. So assume they've got a whole life. That person has a whole life that has nothing to do with you. One of my business principles is always, it's not their job to think about you. It's your job to think about them. Like every event I go to, like sales conference, whatever, I'll say that from stage. I'll say, no one outside of this room is going, oh, I can't wait to see what they learn at Next Up. Like, oh, I can't wait to see what my salesperson learns at that event. They're not thinking about that. It's not their job to think about you. It's your job to think about them. So that's part of the responsibility. So yeah, you can be a nag, but you can also be a great service. You can also be a great help depending on the way you approach it.
Yeah, and to retire that soundtrack. So if we don't have to even reply back to the first email we sent, we can invite the person to a webinar and a new thread. We could actually call them up and give them idea. We could send them a client. There are a gazillion ways to help them that don't involve being a nag, and we're just not going to do those things.
Exactly. What you just said, the way I'd frame that is create a value list of 10 items. And if the first one didn't work through 2 through 10. But it's not a list of sales things. It's a list of, here's the 5 things I know would help them. This is a hack. Like if somebody wants to be a public speaker, here's a hack. Send a speakers bureau you're trying to get represented by a gig you've already got and give them the commission to manage the gig. Like, because automatically it makes them go, oh, wait a second. They've got gigs and they went out. They didn't have to do this. They didn't have to give me 20% of this thing. Like, oh, okay. Like versus everyone else is sending amazing proposals, videos, Everybody's doing that. But nobody is sending like, hey, I got a $5,000 gig. I'd love you to represent me on this one as a test of like, if I'm the kind of person you'd like to represent. And there's not an agent on the planet that's going to go, I don't know, $3,000 with very little work. No, thank you, sir. No, thank you. Like, and you go, but that's going to cost me $1,000. That's short-term thinking. Like if you're trying to get into the speakers bureau because you see the long-term ROI, the $1,000 is a marketing expense. Like ultimately that's all it is. So like stuff like that, again, it's not, I don't mean to be glib with it because it takes time, it takes effort, it takes, you know, sweat and equity and all that stuff. But I still think it's valuable in the long run and it's worth it.
I love it, man. I want to do one more thing in the second question, but I'm going to flip it to you. So you work with a lot of salespeople, account managers, experts, like consultants, people that bring you in to speak and things like that. What other soundtracks around business development do you hear that we need to retire and replace?
Well, I mean, the most common one that everybody's heard over and over is that's not how we do things here. Sales teams, I'll give you a COVID example. We joked about COVID a little bit. During the 2 years where it was really, really bad, sales teams that had broken soundtracks would say, that's not how we do things here. And what they meant was, I'm an in-the-room guy. I'm the queen of coffee drop-off. Like, I can work the account. Like, you get me in the space, I bring coffee. Like, I will go around the whole office. Like, and then all of a sudden, the room became illegal. And they couldn't get into the room. It became closed. The ones who had broken soundtracks got stuck there and said, that's not how we do things here. The good sales team said, I just got invited into somebody's living room with Zoom. And I noticed they have a pair of skis on the wall behind them. And I noticed they had a Butler University banner on their other shoulder. And I noticed they had the Lord of the Rings trilogy on the show. Like, and all of a sudden I can get to really know them in a new way. And also it's forcing me to learn a technology I put off, because most sales teams have said, someday I'm going to, and then they insert a technology. Well, guess what? Someday is today. Like the luxury of waiting is gone. And so that's the other thing. That's the difference to me, where some people got stuck with like, that's not how we do things here, versus going, it wasn't my desire. Like I would say crisis is an invitation to innovation. Crisis is an invitation to innovation. So I learned things during the pandemic that I wouldn't have learned at the speed I was forced to learn them on my own. And I could be grumpy about that. I can be frustrated about that. And I was. There were my wife would say there was months when I was just moping. But there came a point where it was like, I can pout or I can plan. Like that's a soundtrack for me. You can pout or plan. You can pout like, oh, it's not fair. I wish the old way, whatever. Or I can plan and go, here's the new model. I have a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal. And I put off podcasting for 10 years. Friends were like, you got to have a podcast. I didn't have one. And then guess what happened when every live event I had got canceled? All of a sudden I was like, oh, man, I need to develop some other things. Like I can't rely on. And so I developed a podcast, and I'm so glad I had 2 years later when live events are really back in full steam. I'm glad I have that. I have a new skill,
right?
I have a new thing. And so that's one that I saw a lot in the last 2 years.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the version that we heard was a lot from our clients is I can't walk the halls. I used to walk the halls. It's very similar, same thing, right?
Yeah.
But there's other ways to do it, to your point. Man, this has been great. Okay, so let's move on to our third of 5 questions. I'm actually super interested in this because you are such a freaking creator. You write so many books. You write like basically full articles on LinkedIn. They're really powerful. So like, what's your personal system to keep growing yourself and your impact? How do you stay on it?
Well, I mean, I make it a goal. I joke that I'm a goal nerd, but it's really not a joke. I'm obsessed with goals because they changed my life in my mid-30s. And so when it comes to creativity, the way I approach it, I always tell people, I don't believe in writer's block. I believe in idea bankruptcy. If you can't write, you just don't have enough ideas. You haven't been curating your ideas. Your vault is empty. And so I put a huge premium on being deliberate about capturing ideas and then reviewing ideas and then graduating ideas. So I'll give you one example. So I'm a notebook guy. I'm a paper guy. So I have a notebook with me at all times. And I have a numerical list of ideas. So I'll have probably about 1,560 ideas this year that I've written down, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll code them. So I'll go, okay, I learned this about myself. I need to, like, I'll write learn in all caps and I'll go, hey, remember that you've discovered that putting them in via audio is easier because you can just riff and they'll go right into your phone. Like, let's do that going forward, because you forget the good stuff you learn unless you're deliberate with it. Today in the car, when I was driving back from an errand and I was listening to a book called The Formula, and he mentioned the phrase immediacy. You're more likely to get a job if you're the last person they interview because of immediacy. They remember you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a great follow-up. So then I'm going to connect that to me going, if I do a good job following up with clients, I'm not asking them to go, hey, who is that guy we had 18 months ago? Like, no. Immediacy is if I have multiple touch points, I'm the last person they interacted with. Like, oh, that's immediacy. That's how I can adopt it.
Oh, it matters. Yeah.
So I'm feeding myself ideas, and it came from, I put this in soundtracks, the Dorothy Parker quote, which is, creativity is a wild mind and a disciplined eye. So the wild is you fill yourself with a bunch of different topics. You listen to most podcasts, you read a book, you talk to a client. And then the discipline is you see the connection between them in a way nobody else has before. So I collect ideas, I review the ideas, I graduate them to projects, and I also put hours against it. I know it takes me about 500 to 600 hours to write a book. So if I'm faithful to that and I track the ideas, and I tracked, every hour for my last book.
Yep.
And
Me too.
it became a project that I could work on versus an intimidating, it's hard for me to write books. It's a scary process still. I'm sure there's some people that feels like running in a field with a ribbon. That's not my experience. It's challenging. So that I put a real premium on the process of creativity versus I hope it magically shows up today, because I found that it doesn't tend to work that way, at least for me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm like you, I was paper, I converted to digital. I'm using this database called Personal Knowledge Management, the whole PCAM rabbit hole. I'm using an app called Craft. And to your point, whenever I get an idea, I just type it in there. I've got a list of, hey, here's weekly newsletter ideas. Here's ideas on client follow-up. And I put them where I might access them.
What's it called? Craft? Is that with a
Craft.
K?
Yes, CRAFT.
CRAFT. All right.
Syncs across all your devices. It's like a prettier version of Evernote, basically.
Yeah. That's a good way to say it.
It's in the same domain, but
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And it's just so helpful. And have you read Tiago Forte's book, Building a Second Brain?
No, but really, I'll add that to my list. Building a second brain.
Put it in your list. It's 1,500.
I'm writing it down right now, dude. I'm writing it down right now. Building a second brain.
It changed my mindset around this stuff. It basically says he gives you a system for how to capture all these ideas you're talking about. Really nifty. Anyway, to the audience though, Jon's advice here about becoming a collector is so dang important, because if you're a lawyer at a high performing law firm and you're like, man, I've got to write a client alert, I haven't done it in a quarter. Well, if you don't have a list of ideas like Jon's talking about, you're going to hesitate. So
Super intimidating. Intimidating. And here's the thing, it works across all facets of life. If a husband said to me, hey, I want to be better at buying my wife presents for Christmas, I go, easy. In September, you don't even have to do it all year. In September, keep a list. When she mentions, oh, that's a cute plate, or, oh, I like this, keep a list so that in December, when you sit down, you've just given yourself 10 amazing things, and she's going to be blown away. Just the act of writing it down in September, that's the thing that's going to matter, that you listen, that you cared. And it's the same with clients, where if you remember something that was important, or it becomes a story you bring to the next client, you just get richer. And then you mentioned a specific, I got to do a quarterly update or something. You should have a template to make it easier for yourself. You should ask every time you do something, you should ask the question, is this the last time I'll ever do it? And if it's not, you should do a template. You should do a template, because the next time you do it, you'll be so glad that you took the time on the upfront. It's a little more annoying on the upfront, but you just get better and better. If you decided this year, I'm going to add a system, I'm going to systemize the stuff I'm doing that's repetitive. First quarter, it'd be a little slower. You'd be a little slower. Second quarter, you'd pick up speed. Third quarter, speed. Fourth quarter, you're flying because of the systems you've built the whole time. You'll never go back to chaos. You'll be like, oh, this is my jam. That's how I like to think about it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And comment on this one last thing, and then we'll move on to our fourth question is, I just feel like this become a collector idea is so important. And everybody, audience, you can be thinking of the different places you might collect ideas, or anything from where do I want to go on vacation, having a list of those, to what I want to write that next article about, everything in between personal and professional. And Jon, here's my specific question. What I've found is it just takes 20 seconds to document these when you have them. But if you don't, you never even notice anything go slower in any day to day when you collect the ideas. But holy moly, do they speed up things afterwards. So I think some people's broken soundtrack they need to retire is, oh, it sounds like a lot of work to collect these. Just carry a notebook around, like Jon's talking about. So Jon, your thoughts around that idea, and then we'll move on.
Well, I think you're right. That's one of the broken soundtracks. The other is it's going to be so complicated. So here's the thing. I need you to hear what Mo didn't say. Mo didn't say you have to use Craft. He's a digital guy. Any advice you hear, especially around systems like this, you should modify it. The reason these systems fail so often is we hear somebody say, I get up at 2 a.m. and do burpees and a cold plunge. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to do it too. And you got to punch snow leopards in the face with like other influencers. And you're like, that doesn't fit my personality or my strengths or my skills. So I think you have to modify it. So if you're a paper person, awesome. If you're a digital person, awesome. It doesn't matter the system. It matters it's your system and you use it faithfully. And it's not perfectly, it's faithfully. It's faithfully. So that's what I would say is like some people go, well, it's so complicated. My system might be complicated for you. For me, it gives me great joy. I actually find it gives me peace because I have all these thoughts, all these things, and they're just colliding. If I'll spend a few minutes, I can capture it. And then you're right. I've given myself a gift for when it's time to work, because then if I sit down with, I've got a client, here's an example, like say I have speaking agents that book me to speak, and I want them to know the good things that are happening for my business because it gives them something to talk to the possible clients about. That's on me. I own that. Number one, that's my responsibility. It's not their responsibility to go keeping tabs on John to try to collect anything good that's happening in his business. No. It's my job. So then like I can make a template of that once a quarter, I send them 5 items and then I collect the items during the year. And then it's not that every quarter I'm going, did anything good happen this quarter? Like, no, I go, oh yeah, we just did this event with Range Rover and Wyclef Jean was there. Like, what? That's crazy. That was a highlight. Let me add that. So you're giving like, it's a gingerbread trail back to the good stuff in your life. Ooh, and if you don't have that, it's hard to remember the good stuff. Like you're putting a lot of pressure on your brain. I'd rather put the pressure on a notebook or in my laptop.
I love it. You told that funny story in the book about our mutual good friend, Tim Grohl, and him reading Zig Ziglar stuff for like 20 years. I was just dying. The book's so funny that there was multiple times I was laughing out loud and my wife's Becky's like, what are you reading?
I love that. That's my favorite. When somebody goes, my wife doesn't like you because I woke her up in bed. I was laughing so loud. Like that's a very niche compliment, but I will receive that. I'll receive that compliment.
Well, I was laughing at a joke, knowing the person you're talking about. Like it was like, there were so many things, and then it was the best. All right. So 4th question, we've sort of covered this, so maybe we pop up at a higher level. So the 4th question for this, what lies do you hear people telling themselves and what's the truth? Well, obviously that's the whole point of your book.
Yeah, sure.
But because we dove down a little bit deeper into business development, relationship lies, maybe you can give us a top, like bigger picture lie, in people's whole lives. What's a lie you hear people telling themselves? What's the truth?
Well, so one is it's too late. It's always, regardless of your age, like my 9-year-old felt it was too late. We ended up writing a teenage version of this book because I've written at the time.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I'd written 7 books at the time. And this is the first time parents came out of the woodwork and said, do you have one for teenagers? Because if I could have learned how to choose how to think as a teen, it would have changed the whole arc of my life. Yeah. And I didn't have a book for teenagers, but I did have 2 teenagers. And I knew if I wrote it, it would sound like an adult trying to sound cool. Like, hello, fellow youths. Like, don't mean to be so lit. Oh, savage. Like, don't crease the J's. And so my 2 teenage daughters wrote this book called Your New Playlist that's designed for teenagers. And one of the interesting things I learned in that is my oldest daughter, when she was 9, felt it was too late to join the swim team. Because we have a culture where kids are doing sports in the womb. Like as a fetus, they're playing flag football. And so you can feel too late at 5. So I've been surprised how many 22-year-olds I meet that are too late, how many 27-year-olds. So too late's one. There's assumptions like it'll be too expensive. It'll be too time consuming. It'll cost me other parts of my life. Like when it comes to business, a business one would be like, well, if I do that, I'll have to become a workaholic. And you go, or like, I'll have to travel constantly and I won't see my family. And you go, whoa. Like you haven't taken 1 trip. Like, never mind. You're taking 300 and you're in marriage counseling. Like there's a lot of space between those 2 things. Like, I don't know where you got that idea, but like, we can work it out. Like, let's figure it, like, let's solve that problem once we've had 10 clients, not go, I don't have time for 1,000 clients. You have 0 right now. You might be able to have time for 10. So I think there's a lot of assumptions. Yeah, there's a way. The other one is, one thing I love to tell people that listen to podcasts like this is you're a high performer. And the reason I tell that is there's a broken soundtrack that high performers are other special people in other special places. But what I love to say is like, no, if you're listening to this, you're a high performer. And I know that because low performers don't listen to podcasts like this. They don't. They don't read my books. They don't sign up for my challenges. Like they don't even know they exist. So just understanding like, oh, that's right, I'm capable of something and there's more there. That's one that, you haven't come to the end of you. There's more that you can develop. There's more that you can give. I think those are really common. And the last one, this is business related, is what I do doesn't have worth, doesn't have value. And that can manifest as undercharging for what you do. Like, I'll show you, Mo, I'll just grab this off my wall. One of my soundtracks that I wrote is Ask for More. Ask for More. I wrote this on August 27th, 2020. So more than 2 years ago. I found myself undervaluing my work in negotiations. And so I needed a reminder. That's not sexy. That's not special. Like, you don't have to be a copywriter to write those words. But I needed a reminder that I've seen thousands of times in the last 2 years that, hey, ask for more. Like, remember, ask for more. Like,
Right.
we tend as small business owners to undervalue what we do and undercharge. And I needed a reminder of like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm going to work on that. It's a practice. So those are a couple that I've seen a bunch.
No, I love it. You know, that ask for more really aligns with one of the things we teach, which is a lot of times when people are creating a book of business, they're teaching, they're going out at no charge and like teaching a prospect about a thing, whatever their expertise is. And what almost everybody does is say, if they have an hour session like that, they go 5 minutes over, they pack 4 hours of stuff into an hour.
Yeah.
But the better approach is pack 45 minutes of stuff into an hour and leave 15 minutes to talk about next steps, which is effectively what the ask for more part is. And then now you're in the room, Zoom or in person, actually determine what that is, shape it, overcome objections, all that kind of stuff, and actually have a next step. So it really fits.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Okay. The last question for everybody is, how do you keep yourself on track, including handling setbacks and successes? And obviously we've covered some of that. One of the things I thought might be interesting in this section for you is the end of the book where you talk about symbolism.
Oh yeah.
Creating a symbol. Would that be good to cover this one?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that fits into the repeat, that you've got to repeat these things or you just won't learn them. It's like anything else. There was a year when I was fluent at Spanish. I lived in Costa Rica for 4 weeks with a family. It was my minor. I was dreaming in it. I can say 50 words now because I didn't use it. Like, you can lose a whole language unless you're using it. So this is a way to use the thing you're working on. So when it comes to symbols, I like to think about 3 easy ways to create them. And so I'll take something I want to believe is true, something I know is true, and I'll tie it to a symbol. And an example of that would be, I was going on vacation with my wife and kids, and a book was due 2 weeks after we got back. So I knew I was going to possibly be physically present, but mentally absent. I had enough history in my life to know I've done this before. When I got a big project, there's a big client, and I'm there, I'm physically there, but I am mentally absent. My wife goes, "Where are you?" And it's never good for the whole family. And so I decided, I wrote on a note, "Don't miss it." And I read that note 1,000 times before we went. Don't miss it, don't miss it, don't miss it. When we were in Jackson Hole, which is where the vacation was, I was present enough to notice that the pine cones on the street looked different than the ones we have in Nashville. Like, I thought, wow, that pattern's different, they're shaped different. So I picked it up and I brought it home with me 2,000 miles like a lunatic in a plastic bag. Like, I imported a pine cone, and now it sits on my desk because I know there's going to be another time when I'm tempted to miss it. And so the way you create a symbol is 3 things. You find something that's personal. It has to be personal to you. The second thing is it has to be visible. It can't be inside a drawer like my pine cone. I didn't have to go, "Mo, I'll be back in 10 minutes. I got to dig in the attic for this pine cone." It was within arm's reach. The third thing is that it has to be simple or you won't use it. And my favorite example that I put in the book is the Nike Livestrong bracelets. It was personal. You never met somebody and you'd say, "Why do you wear that?" And they go, "Just, I hate diseases. Like, I wear disease jewelry. I have a necklace for eczema, and I have like a bracelet about lupus awareness." Like, nobody did that. They would say, "My mom, my mother-in-law, my uncle, my aunt, they had a cancer story that was personal." Second thing was, it was visible. Nike could have made it skin tone color. They could have made it gray. They made it bright yellow. And the third thing was, it was so simple to use. Nobody on the planet was like, "How does a bracelet work again?" So the arm part goes in the whole part. So I think that what's fascinating is everyone listening to this after this episode will go look at their desk or their fridge or their nightstand or their mantle and go, "Oh, I've already surrounded myself by symbols. I already know how to do that. I'm already really good at that." So what if there was a new thought that I want for this new year that I could turn into a symbol that would remind me of this thing that by the end of the year, I want it to be automatic. It's going to take a little time, just like anything else. But that symbol's going to give me a leg up of not forgetting it.
Yeah, I love it. Personal story. Of course, it was before reading the book Soundtracks. It was like 15 years ago. But I was really trying to cement the idea of doing the most important business development task first thing in the morning. Just to like, because sometimes I would get in my own head around, I'm scared of reaching out to somebody.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And so I had this silver dollar that my grandfather had given me. He's passed away. And that guy was like the most hardworking person I could ever think. He's my role model for hardworking and making a dream happen. From being basically having no money at all to borrow to building up thousands of acres in northeastern Indiana farmland, and did it all himself. So that physical item that I knew he carried in his pocket at some point became a symbol for me. And I would just put it in my pocket in the morning. And as I would put it in, I'd think, that is the thing I'm going to do today. And I wasn't allowed to take it out until I,
so good, dude.
Yeah. And then I had a friend go, "Hey, do you ever sleep in your pants?" That's funny. Like,
yeah.
no,
That's so good.
Never.
That's so good. Well, and I have one. I have one here.
Oh,
this
cool.
one, my 92-year-old, my wife has a 92-year-old grandfather.
Amazing.
Maybe this one. And so, yeah, coins are powerful too, because you can flip your circumstances. A coin is so good. So yeah, I love, again, like example 400 of why we love talking to each other.
I love it. Okay, Jon, it is time for the last question. It's different for every person in season 5. I know you're going to be excited. It's time for the cheesily named super powerful inspirational nudge, which of course spells
inspirational nudge.
Yeah.
Super power
Spin.
spins.
Yeah, there we go.
It took me a while. Hey, I didn't say smartest guest. I said funniest. So
We are now spinning the wheel, my friends, for you audio listeners. I know you can't see it. Here we go. And the question for Jon is, Jon, what have you learned today? Oh, that's an interesting one.
That is a good one. I wrote down Building a Second Brain book. I learned about craft as a possible app for me to look into, and I learned about building a second brain. I always am up for a book recommendation. My goal this year is to read 66 books, so maybe I'll add that to the list.
Why 66? How'd you come up with that?
I read 60 last year, and I find it's good to grow a goal by 5 to 10%, because what I usually do is go, I read 10 books, I'm reading 100. And that is not how goals work. It turns out that is a super dumb way to do it. So we have a culture. It's like, go big or go home. If your goal doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. What? Who says? So I'll be fine growing at 5 to 10% and winning for the foreseeable future versus so many times when I bought a really expensive bike that I didn't use versus just borrowing a friend's to see if I like cycling. I don't like cycling. I don't like any sport that involves getting hit by cars pretty regularly. Turns out I'm a runner. But I didn't ease into that. So now I'm going, what does 5% growth look like? What does 10% versus going, I'm going to read 1,000 books.
No, it's true. You know what cracks me up about that, Jon, is like, if you and I we're both runners and I just love it. Say we're going to meet together somewhere and run a marathon. And I'm just running 6 or 8 miles right now. I wouldn't go out next week and go, I'm going to run 24 miles because then I'm almost at 20. Nobody would do that.
No.
For some reason in business that we do that all the time. The whole.
Oh, and nobody will ask us the question. I mean, that's why what you do is so good. Cause usually nobody goes, hey, where'd you get this number? Where'd you come up with that? And you're like, from my heart. Well, I love your heart, but it's I need some data. And I've had so many of those where I've had to go, I came up with that number because I thought it was a cool number. Where it was I'm going to do 10,000 of this. And you go, had you done it before? Nah, but I like the ring of it. The ring of it? That's terrible.
So
you
true.
can't, the branding of the goal should be your last concern. The first concern should be, do I have evidence of this? Do I have the time to do this? Where is this going to come from? That's why I'm doing 66 is specific. But it's because I did 60 in 2022. And then I was like, I can do the math on that. That's 10, carry the 1. That's 66. So that's how I came up with that.
You can even have a symbol of a Route 66 sticker.
Yeah, exactly. I can put that. Yeah, I can do the whole thing.
All together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all coming together.
I love it. Well, Jon, this has been awesome. I know our audience is going to just get so much out of it. Where should they go to learn more about you, to maybe engage in, I don't know, a challenge or something?
Yeah.
I'm making it up. I don't know.
So acuff.me/challenge. That's where I'd go. We're doing a free 3-day goal challenge. During the pandemic, when all my events got canceled, I had all these keynotes and ideas and nowhere to share them. So we started doing online challenges and going, okay, if I can't travel, maybe I can create conversations online. And so now we've got 19,000 people in a private Facebook group. The challenges are free. It's goal nerds like me who will go, oh yeah, you will laugh at 66 books, but totally get it. And then go, oh, okay, I might have to try. So I might have to get that coin back out. He's got a pine cone on his desk. Like those are my people. Those, like, if you bought like another life planner this year, you're my people. I have 10 on my shelf. I did a review. I'll do a review of all 10, which is roughly like, didn't open it, didn't use it. Like I have, so like if there's been a life planner in the last 5 years that somebody's like, this is the Zen Tree Master approach to life. I'm like, I could get into that. I don't know what that means, but maybe. Like, I like their Instagram ad. I'm a sucker for a life planner. So yeah, it's a 3-day thing. It's acuff.me /challenge, acuff.me/challenge. And then I have a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal.
I love it. I love it. Everybody, hey, go to acuff, acuff.me /challenge. And I'm going to give you one more compliment. I totally forgot that being on your email list, which, by the way, everybody, Jon's email list is really good. Look at the impact you had on me last year.
Hey, that's a lot of goals, dude. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. And that was a product too. We talked about this. Again, we could talk for hours because it's fun. I used a calendar for like 8 years, this big wall calendar that Mo just held up. It's finishcalendar.com. And then finally I was like, I just wonder if I should reach out to the company and be like, could we do like a collab or something? And they were like, of course. Yeah. So here's the thing, Mo, like, I don't like the thing where people say there's no harm in asking. There's tremendous harm in asking for something you don't deserve, haven't earned from the wrong person. Like, there's a million ways to do that. People use that as a way to be a bully. Don't be a bully. Like, people don't like to buy from bullies. But when you ask the right way, you often discover there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there, and you have to be brave, and it can be challenging. That's why you need community. That's why you need folks like Mo that'll encourage you. But I asked, and then the guy was like, yeah, let's do it. So for the last 4 or 5 years, we've had a big calendar together. Yeah. And for me, it's been fun. Finishcalendar.com. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, and everybody, audience, what I held up, if you're on the audio side of things, you couldn't see it. So where do people get it, Jon?
Finishcalendar.com.
Finishcalendar.com. So that's where I ordered one. I think I heard about it on your email list last fall. And it basically puts the whole year on one dry erase board. On one side, it's landscape. On the other, it's portraits. So you choose your own.
And it makes it real. It makes it like, I find that time is fictional if I can't see it. If I can't see it, time is fictional. And here's my last tip, because I love tips. Somebody taught me, if somebody asked you to do something and it was 24 hours from now, would you rearrange your entire life to do it? If not, don't say yes to it. The problem is you say yes to stuff 3 months out as if it's not you who has to do it. You go, yeah, I'll do that. And then by the time it shows up, you're like, ugh. So if you wouldn't rearrange your entire calendar, if somebody said, hey, can you do this tomorrow to make that happen? Be careful you're not saying yes to a bunch of stuff because the time feels fictional. So a big view makes time real to me. And I go, the other way I think about it is like, I don't want to screw future me. I don't like when past me says yes to something they should have said no to. And then by the time it shows up, future me is like, you jerk. Why did you say yes to this? So that's what I like to think about time, is the calendar helps me go, okay, like what amount of time do I have? Right. And I said yes to this 8 weeks ago. So like, I'm pretty deliberate about like, oh, that'd be fun. I love Mo. That'd be a fun conversation. So yeah, finishcalendar.com.
Yeah, it is so powerful because a year can feel like it's so much. Oh, I can say yes to anything. But man, when you sit down with your partner, your spouse, your family, and you map out what a year is, man, big chunks start getting gobbled up and you quickly realize the year goes by really fast.
Well, kids go by fast. Like my wife, I remember when we had like an 8 and a 10-year-old, my wife was like, let's count the summers because we don't have many left. And all of a sudden you go, I don't have a lot of summers left with my kids. And if we're like, we can't, like, I want them to be full of real memories. How do we, like, you got a handful, like you got a handful at best. And so, yeah, it's a word that I'm sure you and I both say all the time. It's being intentional, being deliberate. Like it's amazing. And Mo, I always tell people it's so easy to crush right now because the bar is so low. The average American watches the equivalent of 2 months of TV a year. 2 months. So if you only watch 1 month, you are killing, dude. You're killing. So that's the other thing. Don't be intimidated by the work or it's complicated. Like the bar is pretty low right now. You can be excellent and still watch a whole month of TV, which is maybe too much, but I'm not here to judge. I like TV. I'm not against TV, but I'm against 2 months. Like goals are hard because Netflix is easy. There's the last takeaway. Goals are hard because Netflix is easy.
I like it. Well, Jon, I just can't thank you enough. When we met that first time at that dinner that Chad and Michael and other people put together, like, I don't even remember what you said, but when we went around the table with a dozen people at dinner or whatever, I just remember the authenticity that you shared. I didn't even remember what it was. I just thought, I want to spend more time with this guy.
Oh, I
And,
appreciate that.
You've delivered that today. And yes, just the finish a calendar, like that prompted me to take a sabbatical last summer. And my wife and I had a wonderful time. Like you've impacted me in some really specific ways you don't even know about. And I just want to thank you for being on the show.
I appreciate that, Mo. Well, let's stay in touch. I'd love to keep getting encouraged. And if there's a book you recommend or an app, like I'm all ears. So thanks for teaching me today.
That sounds awesome. All right. Thanks, Jon.
See ya.